weather forecasting isn't just important for understanding how you should dress. Take a look at this dumb and useless fact.
23% of all airplane accidents are caused by the weather.
So having an understanding of how our atmosphere moves and flows is going to help out the transportation industry and pilots reach their destinations safely. So as a weather forecaster, I do a lot of hard work to try to figure out what the weather is going to be like in the future. Before we talk about weather forecasting, you have to understand there's two types of forecasts. First, there's a human-generated forecast, where a human's going to look at a number of different computer models, maybe 3, maybe 7 or more, and then reflect on what's happened in the past to make a forecast. It's kind of like an art. You have to take knowledge that you've learned from the past and apply it to make a good forecast. Now, we don't just have human-generated forecasts anymore. We also have computer model-generated forecasts. And what you see there on the screen in blue is an example of what a computer model looks like. A computer looks at lots of data points over distance and time, and it determines a numerical forecast, which becomes graphics and text. A true computer model forecast has no human involvement and no human input. So if we look around the southern Pennsylvania region and look at the types of forecasts that we can get, one type of forecast is from the National Weather Service. And the National Weather Service actually is a computer model forecast. Humans only intervene when it's necessary. Here's an example where it might have been nice for a human to step in. Check out the date. It's July 10th, 2010. And look at Wednesday's forecast in July. There's a chance of snow and a high of 91 degrees. Somebody really wasn't checking the forecast too closely when the computer spit it out. Here's how a computer forecast works for the National Weather Service. This is southeastern Pennsylvania, mostly Lancaster County. And this area right here is Hempfield School District, Penn Manor School District, Manheim Township. These yellow dots represent places where a computer model will try to figure out the forecast. They correspond mostly with airports and where weather observing stations are located. So the question is, what's the weather going to be like in that little red area that's kind of between those 3 dots of Lidditz, Thomasville and York, and Middletown up by Harrisburg? So on December 16th, 2017, I actually took a look at what one computer model called the GFS was predicting for the next day in Middletown, Pennsylvania. If you look at the line there that's X/N, there's the number 39. That indicates that they're expecting a high of 39 degrees on December 17th. If you look at the Lancaster computer model, it was predicting a high there of 42 degrees. And if you look at York, it was predicting a high of 48 degrees. That's a big difference from 39 to 42 to 48. So what's it going to be in the middle? This is where the computer comes in. It uses math to estimate what the actual forecast is going to be between those 3 points. When you click on that spot in the National Weather Service map, there's the forecast for the day. A high of 41 degrees. Because 41 is reasonably in between all those numbers. If you would have clicked a little bit closer to York, it would have been a higher number. If you would have clicked a little bit closer to Middletown and Harrisburg, it would have been a lower number. But the general forecast stayed the same. That's an example of what a computer forecast does. The Weather Channel is a national weather organization that's been around for a long time, and it also produces computer model forecasts. The local forecast, which airs every so often on the network and is scrolling across the bottom of the screen, is generated by a computer. There's no real human interaction here, and I can prove that to you, as this was one of the forecasts that I saw on the air one day. This is Lancaster reaching a high of 999 degrees. That's actually the low temperature. Might be a little bit too warm. If you pull out a mobile device, a smartphone, and you get a weather app, chances are that is also simply another computer model forecast. There's all kinds of varieties of computer forecasts here. And you have to be careful because the entire day's weather is represented by one icon and one temperature. What does that mean? Is it 73 degrees and sunny all day? Is it sunny most of the day with a shower later? Is it going to be 73 all day, or will that only be for 3 minutes of the day? Trying to understand a weather forecast out of one simple icon is challenging. A national weather organization called AccuWeather does use computers, but it's basically a human-generated forecast. Non-mobile apps are all human forecasts, and any TV station which mentions Accu somewhere in their forecast has purchased this forecast from AccuWeather. In some cases, the TV personalities are encouraged to read the forecast statement that's provided by AccuWeather. AccuWeather is based in State College, Pennsylvania, and it's founded by former Penn State meteorologists. Locally, Channel 69 up in the Lehigh Valley and ABC 6 in Philadelphia use the AccuWeather forecast. Local television news stations are mostly human-generated forecasts when you watch them on television. Their websites and their apps are not. Those are usually computer-generated, but if you're watching a news program and you see a weather forecast on TV from any of those stations, somebody went in very early in the day, looked at the computer models, and developed their own forecast for what they believe is going to happen in the future. Not all the people, though, at all of those stations are actual meteorologists, however. Some meteorologists are just trained on-air personalities. So let's take a look at if they're different. And again, we're looking at December 17th of 2016 for Lancaster, Pennsylvania. This is the National Weather Service forecast for that day, a computer with human editing. They were forecasting a wintry mix with a high of 41. A wintry mix could be rain, freezing rain, or sleet. The Weather Channel was predicting a high of 40 degrees with ice changing to rain. A little bit more descriptive than the National Weather Service forecast. The Weather Channel also has a tendency to name winter storms. The National Weather Service names hurricanes. The Weather Channel, for a promotional tool, does name winter storms, and this storm on this day was Winter Storm Decima. This is one mobile app that you can get. This is the Weather Underground mobile app, and it was predicting a high of 39 degrees with ice pellets. But the Weather Underground gives you a little more information than just one icon. If you want to, you can go ahead and click, and it will break down this forecast hour by hour. Now, it's important to understand that most computer models do not do an hour-by-hour forecast. They usually forecast every 3 or 4 hours. This is kind of silly because it's hard to be so precise and so exact. But again, the computer is just using math to make a general estimation in this case. And it does give you a little bit of a clearer weather picture, that it's ice pellets to start, then around noon it changes to rain, then it's mostly cloudy and up in the 30s by the time we get to the afternoon. It's a little more descriptive than just one icon and one temperature. This is the AccuWeather forecast from its weather computer. It's predicting a high of 36, and it's a little bit more explanatory. It's an AM icy mix and then a little rain. However, I don't know about you, but that symbol that they're using there doesn't make any sense to me. Now, if you want to talk about silly, AccuWeather really takes it to the extreme. They have a forecast that will go out 90 days. 90 days, that's 3 months. So if this is AccuWeather's winter forecast for frequent storms, and it hadn't snowed at all in October or November, then you would think their 90-day forecast on December 17th would have lots of examples in snow in it. So, let's see. Here we are, the first 2 weeks of the forecast, and there's no snow there. Temperatures are all above 32. We'll go into the new year of 2017, and, well, there's no snow anywhere on there. Let's go to the 22nd, and we have our first hint of snow on January 25th. That's 1. Then January 29th, that's 2, but both are just a bit of snow. And February 5th, snow at times in the morning and 45, that's 3. Now we get to the 23rd, and that's ice to snow, that's 4. Cloudy with a little snow on the 26th, that's 5. And we end our forecast in March, and no snow there. So frequent storms in Pennsylvania, they only have 5 opportunities for snow in their 90-day forecast, none of them looking like a major winter weather situation. That's a little bit suspicious. The human-generated forecast I took from meteorologist Matt Moore at WGAL, and his forecast was a mixture to freezing rain tapering to drizzle with temperatures warming and an overall high of 36 to 40 degrees. That's a human-generated forecast, and he's going to give you a little bit more information as to what that means if you go ahead and watch his forecast. The computer-generated forecast, however, at WGAL.com was close to what the National Weather Service had. Freezing rain in the morning, changing the rain showers late, and a high of 39. 100% chance of precipitation. 2 similar forecasts, but different in small ways. Here are the forecasts now all in one screen. Notice the high temperature is not the same for each one, and even the overall forecast for this ice storm is a little bit different. And you as a weather consumer have to figure out which one is the most reliable and effective for you. The actual weather, by the way, there was AM freezing rain and then PM drizzle, but it stayed mostly cloudy. There was no sun, and the high only hit 34 degrees. So of all of those, the closest 2 forecasts would have been WGAL and the AccuWeather computer forecast. We can quantify this statistically by awarding points for being off on the certain type of precipitation that you forecast, being off by a set amount of degrees, and using a consistent scoring system between the National Weather Service, Weather Channel, and mobile device, AccuWeather, and WGAL. The today forecast, you can see the National Weather Service and AccuWeather were actually the most accurate with a score of 2. Lower scores are better. WGAL was next with the Weather Channel close behind, and the mobile devices scored horribly. With a score of 15, it's considered an incorrect forecast. And that's probably how a lot of people are getting their weather, pulling out their mobile device and looking at what the forecast is going to be for that day. Looking into the extended forecast of what tomorrow was going to be, well, then AccuWeather had a score of 8. The Weather Channel and the mobile device, which were computer forecasts, scored above 10. National Weather Service was there as well, and WGAL had a poor forecast with a score of 17. So human forecasters are going to make mistakes. They can be wrong. But computers are often wrong a lot of the time, like your mobile device for the most accurate forecast it should be able to deliver. By the way, it's now April of 2017, so we can go back and take a look at that 90-day forecast posted by AccuWeather, and we can see just how accurate it was. So this again was their forecast, frequent storms for the winter of 2016-2017. What we're going to do is we're going to paint the calendar blue every time the temperature forecast was within 5 degrees. Now 5 degrees, that's a pretty wide berth I'm giving them, but we'll give them 5 degrees. If they have the exact correct forecast, then we'll paint it yellow. And if both the forecast and the temperature are considered correct, we'll paint that square green. So let's see how good they did over 90 days. The first 4 days of the forecast are very accurate. We got a lot of green squares there right in a row. Then when we get to Thursday, the 5th day of the forecast, it ends up being 50 degrees, so they're off by 7, and it's not raining, it's mostly sunny that day. Friday's forecast is correct, and Saturday's forecast, the temperature's correct, but the actual forecast is wrong. It's not mostly cloudy, it rained that day. So over the course of 7 days, 5 of the days were correct, 1 was half correct, and 1 was totally wrong. In the next week, only 2 days were actually correct, and that's day 13 and 14 of the forecast. In the meantime, the temperature forecasts were mainly correct, but the weather was completely off. On Sunday, there was a lot more sunshine. It rained on Monday and Tuesday. Tuesday's high was actually 61. Then Wednesday, there's a little bit of clouds. And Thursday was our first trace of snow. You might not think that this is that big a deal, but we're talking about the Christmas holiday here. So an accurate forecast to some people is very important. Now as we go into weeks 3, 4, and 5 of the extended forecast, it gets a little bit messier. These are the days where the forecast itself was correct. These are days where they actually got snow and it wasn't forecasted, part of their frequent storms for the winter, but both of them only provided 1 inch of snow. And these are days where the temperature forecast was correct. We had some days where the temperature forecast was really off. January 7th was off by 20 degrees, same with the 8th. On the 12th, they wanted a high of 35 and it got up to 64. The only day in these 3 weeks that was considered an accurate forecast was the 21st. That's 1 out of those 21 days. Going over the next 2 weeks, well, we had an accurate weather forecast 3 days. We had an accurate temperature forecast 4 days. And 1 day again with what's considered an accurate forecast. 1 out of the next 14. That's not real good odds. 2 weeks later, as we get into the beginning of February, we have temperature forecasts that are way off on 2 days, and they actually get kind of close 5 of those 14 days. We have 1 snow event on the 9th. So again, we're not looking at frequent storms, just 1 inch there. And then we have a weather forecast correct on the 15th. None of those days have an accurate forecast though, temperature and weather. The next 2 weeks, the temperatures were way off. Record warmth occurred at the end of February of 2017. The 23rd had a high of 73. The 24th was 75, yet the computer model spit out 37 and 36 for highs. You would think a big spell of warmth would be something a computer model could pick up on, but frankly, no, they can't. There were no days that the forecast was correct. Only 3 of the days the temperatures were close. Now let's look at the last week of the 90-day forecast. They hit the correct weather on Sunday the 12th, but then they missed the weather story of the whole winter. The blizzard of 2017. 9 inches of snow fell in mid-March in Lancaster. Schools were closed for 2 days. There was blowing snow and a lot of travel trouble for 3 of those days. And the temperatures were way off. Here's a look at all 90 days of the forecast. And notice that the most accurate forecast is closest to the time of the forecast, the first 4 days after the computer made a forecast. In the next week, it was really hit and miss, and then it was basically luck from there on out. Towards the end of the 90-day forecast, it was extremely unreliable. In the entire forecast, only 9 out of the 90 days had both the temperature and the weather forecast correct, and half of those were in the first week. That's a 10% chance of success. 40 out of the 90 days, only 1 aspect of the forecast was correct, and none of the snow days were correct. From a forecast where their winter, they predicted frequent winter storms, none of them were correct. 19 of the days were over 20 degrees off on the temperature. So I hope you can see that a forecast that goes out more than 4 or 5 days becomes pretty unreliable and you shouldn't make major plans around it. We might get that good in the future, but we're not close to that yet. So I've done some freelance work for WGAL 8 in the area, and I want to give you an idea of what a typical day is like for a weather forecaster there who generates a human forecast. The weekday AM weather shift starts about 1 a.m. and goes to about 1 p.m. You have 36 television hits in that time. Afternoon and evening forecaster usually goes about 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. with roughly 15 weather hits. On the weekend, you can start a little later, 2 a.m. to 11 a.m. with 26 hits, and the afternoon shift on the weekend goes from about 2 p.m. to 1 a.m. with 9 TV hits. Of course, this changes frequently. I'm recording this in April of 2017, and they tend to add newscasts and add weather hits throughout the seasons, but it gives you a rough idea that your morning weekday weather, that's a pretty busy shift. Your main job when you walk in the door is to forecast first. I typically like to look at the weather models and the weather maps, and then I generate what I think the forecast is, but I also compare it with what the previous shift forecast is, as well as what the National Weather Service is saying. Once the forecast is done, most television stations farm out their forecasts to local radio stations. They put something up on the internet. They also might reach out to a newspaper and provide them with a forecast. Once that's done, most television meteorologists are going to make their own graphics for television. It's much like using PowerPoint. You have to decide what the weather story is going to be for each one of your weather hits, and then you go ahead and create the visuals for that story. Before you go on the air, you have to apply your own makeup, and then it's time for the newscast and your on-air forecasts. As I said, there's 36 weather hits on a typical weekend morning, and whenever I used to work that shift, basically I would get 5 or 6 done and set before it was my turn to go on the air. So I would record weather hit number 1, and then as soon as I was done, I would run back to my desk and prepare weather hit number 7, then go and deliver number 2 on the air, then go back and do number 8. It's a very, very busy morning. This is the look of the studio at WGAL. We'll take a closer look at this a little bit later, but that's behind the weather desk. Right in the middle of the picture there, that middle camera has a teleprompter in it. There's a little white box inside it with some black writing. And just below that teleprompter is what is being shown on the station at that time. Next to the cup of joe there on the desk, you can see the weather computer that creates those PowerPoints that I was telling you about. This is the green screen, and you cannot see the graphic on the green screen as you're presenting it. What you have to do is look off to the side at the little TV there hidden under the steps. So by looking at the TV, you can put your arm in the general direction of where you want to point on the green screen. This is Drew Anderson at Fox 43. It's a very similar setup to WGAL. He's got lines on the ground marking basically where he needs to be within the box. The green screen's behind him. He can't turn around and touch it, and you can see projected there on the television to the right what the people at home are going to see. So that's a quick look at the different types of forecasts that can be made and how the weather forecast that you use is created. In the next couple of lessons, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to walk you through as a forecaster what I look for on weather maps and how I come across with my own human-generated forecast.